Good evening. The sun is setting. Of course, this is creative, so I was able to go ahead and set that our sun is setting over here. What we're going to do here is I'm going to demonstrate some signal logic that I've employed in some of my vessels. I had to fix some of it with on these vessels here that was broken with Alpha 8. They had been previously working fine in Alpha 7, but something with Alpha 8, some of the motion sensors stopped working. Not all of them, but some. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go here to this is the Pelican. We have two of them there. We have two of the Nurture and one of the Thunder Naiad. I have parked here inside the Pelican the Swallow small vessel. So if we go up this ramp, I made it really easy to tell where I have it parked. And I would like to do a little demonstration here. In fact, Swallow here uses quite a bit of signal logic. Notice that the door here actually should respond to the Swallow, a small vessel, as I approach it. As I get close here, as I'm about to smack into the central cargo area, and I get myself a nice little warning light. It happens to be that this Pelican capital vessel is really designed to work with a small vessel like the Swallow. Pretty much lines it right, I'm right up at the edge as far as fitting this thing in here. So, lift it off. So, now something like some of my small hover vessels might fit in there a little easier stuff. But if we go over there, all that nice convenient entrance there, the hangar door, and so if we go over here to this Pelican, this is the one that has not been fixed. Signal work is still broken on this one. As I said, not all motion sensors failed. Oh, is it going to behave on all of them? No. Those two work. This one does not. Let's see, maybe as I'm doing the demonstration, maybe this side, the red light sensor works. Maybe it doesn't. There it goes. It does work on this side. I think it's the other side it was broken. I didn't. Well, I guess I replaced more sensors than I had to. Number 3 is working. 2. Number 1 is not. I want to say that when I tested this, notice this, I did not get a red light here. So the sensor for the door might be working, but the combination, there's a motion sensor, or a second one involved for the red light sensor, and it is not triggering. So I ended up didn't replace all the motion sensors when I fixed it, but I did replace a fair number of them. So now we've done a quick demonstration there. Okay. Oh, I gave myself a note here what I was supposed to do next. Replace a broken motion sensor. Well, that one, let's see, 2 and 3 were working here, but the one in the center is not. Yep, I could get off, pretty much smack the cargo crates, and there was no warning. So, go ahead, get out of here. Notice I have here the capital vessel motion sensors. I'll replace that with a motion sensor. It happens to be, let's see, was this color. I haven't played with this already. Okay, one of the things we want to look at here is that the motion sensor Right now I have it down here in the ungrouped stuff. A lot of my groupings here are to make things easier. So that I notice here we have the door warning sensors. That was actually one of those that I replaced. The one I replaced, I believe, was called aisle 1, 2, 3 for along the aisle of doors 1, 2, and 3. And if we go here, I'd probably just be consistent. Door warning sensors, let's put the current one there. We'll go ahead and move it up into that. We're going to change the area that it's good stuff. I happen to have known from poking at this already. I believe that was 1, 1, 5, 7. Now I happen to know the values that was stuff. I might have got this wrong here, so I'm going to go the other way to set your area for the motion sensor, and as opposed to the sliders, your interactive setup, which you get your it has right there instructions on the bottom right hand side of the screen, right where it gives the shows the keys on your numeric keypad that we'd use stuff. So you have enlarge the areas, left control and numpad. To shrink the areas, left control, left alt, and numpad. That stuff. But basically, I just was making sure that the as we're looking at the interactive, our nice little rud area here lines up with the doors and stuff. Notice I happen to have a gap here, so that if you're walking along here, you are not actually setting off this motion sensor. So as long as you're walking around along the ground, you will not contribute to setting off the red lights. Okay. And I wouldn't be surprised, since I did that, I may have just fixed this. But this is my demonstration purposes. Yep. My small vessel. Yeah. Now I get my nice little red warning light, because I happen to have known what the name of the original sensor was there. Anyways. Oops, I got myself. What did I bump into? I must have. I got things parked in here so close, I'm not sure what I bumped into. I might have bumped into this other Pelican. That's my own fault. Okay. So, let's see, I got that. We replaced a motion sensor. Okay, let's take a quick moment. I'm going to actually land the Swallow vessel here. I had made myself a little outline of things to do. And one of them was to give you a quick, as I said, the things here. There's a lot of motion sensor and signal work on all of these examples, including the Swallow. Notice here that because of motion sensors, if we go look up here, you can see one right about there, the center screen, right in front of that cargo box on the bottom. And if we look over here, there's a one on the top, right in front of that cargo box. And stuff. And between those two motion sensors, I get an area effect that I have triggered or linked these shutters and doors to. And in this case, for the Swallow, it is that depending on where the ground is, I can easily get in here and access the cockpit, as opposed to have, right here where I'm standing here, I have access to it. But if let's say I was on a slope for some reason, I would end up probably having to use my jump jet, on my pack, to try to get up on top of the vessel to get there. Another bit of signal work here was we're point to a device on the vessel. So we get bring up the page here. We have our signals. Cockpit forward hatch, which basically works in conjunction with the motion sensors, but in this case it's always on. As long as that switch is on, the hatch will stay open. The other thing here is we have our cargo hatch. The Swallow is a cargo vessel. Even though we only see the 3 from here. If you were to, let's see if I can get our drone here, take a look underneath. This thing is actually loaded up with 10 cargo boxes. Okay. There's our cargo hatch. Let's go ahead and close that. And then I have a bunch of the engineering hatches on the Swallow. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, every one of the devices is accessible. Now they have the repair to blueprint, but I started this before that happened. I thought, my older blueprints do not include this, or may have been since updated to include this. But in this case, I designed it so that it was possible to reach every device inside, as if you could service the vessel. Maybe not necessary anymore with the repair to close engineering. Oh, one more thing with those engineering hatches. So it gives access to every device on this thing. Something I may continue with my blueprints just for that sense of realism, but in this case the Swallow happens to be designed to be upgraded. You can throw a warp drive fuel tank in there. There's a space right down there, right down the throat, where it's efficient to put in a mobile constructor for the small vessel, and this space here is big enough for a warp drive. So the engineering hatches not only give you access to all the devices, but in this case we're designed so that you can upgrade the Swallow to be warp drive capable. Okay, so we're doing our little... I'm not going to show you the signal work on the Swallow. I just wanted to show you some of the uses of some of the signal work and sensors, that stuff. So that, in this case, giving it a very practical feel and access to the vessel. Okay, let's see. So, wait. Hold on. The next thing I want to do, losing track of my little schedule here. The Thunder Naiad. I did mention this in a post and the stuff. The Thunder Naiad here, the signal work has been fixed. Whereas on the Pelican, several of those doors still work fine. There was only a couple broken, and then the aisle sensor. In this case, on the Thunder Naiad, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember if it was all 3 motion sensors for the doors were broken, or if it was only 2. But needless to say, this one has been fixed up, so as you approach, it opens both doors and extends the ramp. Same with the other motion sensors for the other doors. The Thunder Naiad, someone commented in the forum that the LCDs were broken. I went and checked it out here. They actually are not. Notice it says automatic doors enabled. If we go into our control panel, we'll see that our automatic doors is turned on. That signal. There are 1, 2, 3 signals here. Automatic doors, power save, and open access hatches. So if we turn off the automatic doors, notice the LCD is linked to that and also is shut off. Now I approach the doors. Motion sensor is no longer. Something tells me I'm close enough to one of the other vessels. Probably the Pelican would be my guess, and I'm maybe triggering one of their doors. Okay. So, let's see. We have turned off the automatic doors. Let's turn on the power save. If you were paying attention to the power left, there was probably not a, 3-hour difference, I guess, for me just hovering here. That stuff, not bad. was going to say it wasn't a very big savings, but the idea is it tweaks out just a little, the couple things. I think it turns off the mobile constructors and maybe one or two other items. It's not a significant savings, other than the mobile constructors do draw a fair bit of power. But this thing has quite a bit of number of thrusters and RCS on it, so it draws quite a lot of power itself, even with those shut off. So we have the power save. You notice the LCD is now turned on. There's one more LCD that's not on there, and that is open. Access hatches opened. Now we can see all the fuel tanks, and some fuel tanks and generators stashed there. We have a lot of our RCS in the ceiling. When I originally built this, we did not have the med station yet. I was loath to remove any of these seats. I may end up changing my mind and removing a seat to bring the med station down into the main cabin. But for now, it is stashed in the ceiling. I just moved a few things around to accommodate it up there. But the access hatch is open, similar to the Swallow. Almost all the internal devices should be accessible from the access hatches. Okay, even though I am tripping off other doors, these are not these doors opening up, as you may notice. So to open up these doors, we're going to click once, click twice, and notice that the ramp is not extending. Now I happen to like ramps on my hover vessels, because if I'm hovering 3 meters up like this thing is, when I go to jump to get in on it, I would like a nice little platform to land on, as opposed to trying to hope I get it right in that door. So having a platform I can land on and then get in the door is, from there, I find much preferable. This motion sensor for that actually is, since you can send it several blocks down, if I had not disabled the automatic doors and ramps from the control panel there with that switch, it actually goes down here so that even standing if you listen, you should hear it beep. The motion sensor can make a beep as you cross into it. So I'm going to be silent for a moment. Just listen as I press underneath this. Even though I have turned off the automatic doors and ramps, the motion sensor itself stays on. You'll find this even with if you power down your capital vessel or base, the motion sensors may still stay active even when the things are powered off. Okay, now we're going to go over here to the Pelican and inform. It was mentioned that all the Pelican was lit up like a Christmas tree inside. To me, it doesn't look too bad here. However, for your awareness, I understand the expression, the stuff lit up like a Christmas tree. In fact, it'll be nice and lit up red. Occasionally, I have spawned my Pelican in, and all the lights were turned on. Lit up like a Christmas tree, bright and red. Definitely not the way it's supposed to be. So, because I'd had that problem, we're spawning in my capital vessel, all the lights were turned on, bright red. Notice, well, if I go grab the Swallow small vessel, why don't I go ahead and grab that? I can show you that essentially that has just broken my parking warning. So it is not working right. So let's see. Things are parked in close. I'm bumping off of things. Yes, I know. There we go. Got the swallow turned up right. I wanted to get it in here to demonstrate that everything, I'm going to pull all the way up, bump the cargo boxes, and the red light stayed on until I backed up. What ended up happening is, since I triggered when the red light should be turned on, now the state of the signal matches where the light was. So when I backed up and the signal got turned off, so did the light. But all the other lights are still on. I really don't want to take a small vessel and have to, a small vessel or hover vessel, and go to each one of these bays to try to reset the lights. So I built into the control panel, into our virtual switch signals here, reset red lights. Turn it on, which sets it to all the red lights on. So now that the signal of the red lights matches the state they were in. Then I turn it off. They're off. Christmas tree effect over, until I then properly trigger my parking warning light, which would then only activate the relevant red light. Oh, sorry about that. If I need to be careful, a little gentle on the thrusters in here, because it is a tight space. It works. Occasionally I mess up. I want to say most of the time I don't, but there are those times I don't get my clean departure. Okay, so let's see. I've activated all the activated lights, demonstrated the red light. Oh wait, I wasn't done in the Pelican. Let's go through and show you how that works. Okay. Park the swallow. And what we have here is we have a motion sensor in each one of the bays, and then we have a motion sensor, as I replaced in the one earlier in the broken capital vessel, on the other aisle, 1, 2, and 3. That's where it was broken. That's already been replaced on this one. The motion sensors here actually work in conjunction. The one motion sensor, in fact, let's go here. I grouped my devices into groups, not necessarily where it automatically puts them in groups. If you're just to set, group devices, it groups them by type. Well, in this case, I wanted to group them by location, so I had to manually select the devices, and this is door 4. So I go down here and I find door 4. I have my shutter door, my levers. The levers are to control our ramp. The ramp is, in this case, on this vessel, not keyed to the motion sensor. So if I got into that habit later, after I had already built this vessel. So there are 2 levers. One is inside the vessel, one is outside the vessel. We have our light that, if you go here, you notice it is red. So that is our red light that is part of door 4. And we have our motion sensor. This in case, if we're going to look over here, our motion sensor is called, the signal is called door 4. Well, I can then take that motion sensor signal and let's follow it over here. Door 4, let's go down, door 4, door 4. These are our inputs. Door 4 takes we have an input from door 4 over here, combined with input from aisle 4, 5, 6. That, I believe, happens to be one of our door warning sensors. We have aisle 456, which happens to be this motion sensor right here. And in fact, if we go here and look at the device, the interactive setup, so we get an idea with the stuff. As I was showing other stuff, it skips a block just above the floor. So in order to trigger it, this motion sensor, something has to be above the floor and in this narrow aisle. So it's about to hit our cargo boxes. So if we go out of our interactive setup, let's go back to door 4, since we're looking at door 4. The motion sensor for door 4. Oh wait, that's the that's a swallow. No wonder it doesn't look right. Door 4. I was pointing at the swallow when I did that. Okay, door 4 motion sensor. And this will, when we do the interactive setup, we will see it overlap, the swallow sticking out of it. Notice it ends right here. So essentially, once I turn on the swallow, lift it off the floor, it is considered to be in motion, even if it's just hovering there. So that will trigger that motion sensor. The other motion sensor was clear over there. Part of the reasoning for the gap is so that if you, instead of having them right up to next to each other with that gap there, in order to trigger them, that has to be something big enough to be moving in the bay still, and it has to be big enough to go and hit the other sensor as well, so that both are turned on at the same time. And that brings us back to our signal logic, where we have door 4 and aisle 456. If they're, this is an AND signal, so if, in order for it to give a pass a signal on, for it to turn on and give an on signal, both of these must be on. So both motion sensors must be active. Then that gives us our warn 4. There's a reason I do the warn 4. I used to have this feed directly right to the red light. When I was having that problem with the red lights being left on, I needed a convenient way to reset them. So I have down here, warn 4 is feeding into an OR with the reset red lights. So that signal back on our main page, reset red lights, plus the combined signals for the aisle and the motion sensor, so are feeding into an OR. That means either, if both of them are on, it sends an on signal. If either one is on, it sends an on signal. The only way it's actually sending an off, remains off, is that both of them are off. That allows having these these all rigged with the reset red lights. That means I turn on the reset red lights, it turns them all on because it's an on signal, all and stuff, and we have our red light signals here. So if we go over to door 4 here, we'll find that the light, the on-off, when it says configure signal, the on-off is red light 4. It's set to follow it. So if this signal ends up on, the light will be on. The way for that to happen is to be both motion sensors to be on, or for the reset red lights to be on. Okay. Now the levers, or the levers, stuff, I have them called switch 4.1 and switch 4.2. One's inside, one's outside. Now in this case what I am using is an XOR stuff. So we have switch 4.1 and switch 4.2 are both going into XOR. Notice it says equals 1. If both switches are on, the value will actually be 2, and therefore it will be off. If both switches are off, the value will be 0, and it's off. The only way it is on with the XOR is that either switch 1, switch 4.1 is on, and switch 4.2 is off, then it's on. Or if switch 4.1 is off and switch 4.2 is on, then it'll send an on signal. So in other words, only one of the switches can be on at a time. If both are on, it's off. If both are off, it's off. Only one at a time. The advantage to doing the XOR on these two switches is, let's go to another one. They're all pretty much set up the same here. If we switch that one on, the ramp is extended. If I had an OR, it would remain extended, and there would be no difference if I flipped the switch on the outside. As long as either one of the switches is flipped on, it would remain extended. But using the XOR, we'll see now that both switches are on, it sends an off signal. Happens to be, I believe, I'll discuss later some of the stuff that's also going on with this ramp stuff. But basically, that's the symbol of it. They're using an XOR between the two of them. Stuff. Oh, and that's because, oh yes, off. Sending an off signal, that would be an off. I turn this one off, now only one of them is on. It sends an on signal and the ramp is retracted. Okay. If we take a look, in case we're standing in door 5, but it's the same thing as door 4, just with a different signal and stuff. If we take a look at that door, the door here is taking in a signal from door 5. The shutter door is following the signal from door 4. So in other words, these, in this case, the doors are taking it directly from the sensor. So the sensor is putting out one signal. The door takes its cue following that signal directly, but we're also feeding that signal into an AND logic circuit that then takes, if both those sensors are on, then creates another signal, which we then, as I said, we travel through a couple logic circuits before we then trigger the red lights. Okay. So I think that covers our Pelican. Let's do a little more careful on my takeoff. That space is tight, so I usually try to be very careful about that. Okay. Now this is going to be a little challenging because they park so close, but I didn't want to walk here. And the swallow was conveniently there. I'm going to pull into here. Notice that the motion sensor for the door and ramp was working fine. This is not one of the motion sensors that got broken. However, there is another motion sensor involved on the nurture that was broken. So there was a reason I chose to have this coming towards nightfall. Notice as I'm pulling it in here, all those nice cabin lights came on. Now that the swallow isn't moving, they turned off. But if I step outside the swallow, so now there is something in motion, they turn back on again. So there it was. So one motion sensor was not broken, the other one was. So I have already fixed that here on the stuff. In fact, the motion sensor for the lights, we're not going to deal with that so much. But if we follow back here, we notice as I approach the door that the ramp is up. The door came open, but the ramp is up. And if I move out of the line, the door closed and the ramp went down. This is contrary to what we really need. Now, as some may be familiar, when you first place the door is closed. When you first place the ramp is extended. these are the off states. These are the states when they are off. So what ends up happening is that when a signal is sent to turn them on, the door opens, the ramp retracts. Well, it's not a big deal for my small vessel, but what if I'm using this with a hover vessel? That's what the ramp's for, is it not? Well, what we need then is we need the door to be open and the ramp extended. So it happens to be there are, if we look at the control for the signal logic, we have an option to add a, let's see, inverter. The inverter basically takes and reverses the signal. If it's on, it puts out an off. If it receives a off signal, it sends out an on signal. It basically is, that's all it does, it just inverts the signal. Well, it so happens to be, while that is useful in some of the signal logic, and we'll see some of that in just a moment, it happens to be that when you are selecting the ramps, that you can, and many other devices. This is the stuff. When you're going to stuff, you have the option to follow a signal, and there's an I:. That is for invert. So we can tell the ramps to invert the signal. So when the signal is off, they will be on. They will treat it like an on signal. They will be on. When the signal is on, they will be off. So now if we go out and step out of the way of the signal, notice the door closed, the ramp stayed. But now, that was the first time it did it. Now subsequently, when we trigger the motion sensor, that sends its signal, they will now be inverted. So when it's getting an on signal that opens the door, these will treat it as an off signal and be extended. Remember, as I said, when you first place them, that is their off position. Typically when you place a door, it is closed. I've seen a few exceptions, but that's not the norm. And when you place a ramp, it is extended. Those are the off positions. So now the ramp is treating that on signal as an off signal, and well, the door is not reversed, so it's behaving normally. Okay, so we've got that. Let's take a look perhaps a little more at the signal involving those doors, because it so happens to be, notice I have here automatic hanger access, similar to the automatic doors on the Thunder Naiad. Let's go ahead, we can flip that switch, and I can walk right up to that door. Okay, walk right up the door and nothing happened. Okay, well, let's take a look at our signal work here, because there's a little more going on with these doors than just simply. Again, notice I'm cheating with the device grouping. I have grabbed all the relevant devices and I've stuck it in a single group. We have our motion sensor, the signal coming out we're calling rear sensor. I can come over here, I can see if I've got anything called rear sensor. Right here, hanger switch, rear sensor. If they're on an AND signal, so if they're both on, then we send out an open hanger signal. If one or the other is off, in this case, then it's going to be an off signal. AND signal needs both of them to be on to send an on signal. So if I'm flip the switch off, it's giving an off signal. It doesn't matter whether that sensor is on or off, it still will be off. It needs both to be on signals for it to then send the signal on. So if we were then to go look, our shutter door is taking the open hangar signal and following it, and our 3 ramp pieces are also following the open hangar signal, but they are inverting it. Okay. Now, the LCD screen is not on the signal at all. It just happens to be, it's the marker for the switch. I happen to have put it in the device group because it's, well, part of that system. Even if it's not linked to the system, it's, you know, it's my instructions. This switch is for that system. Okay, so that is one signal group here. One of the questions in that forum post was actually, I believe, asking about these signal switches up here. Notice we have our main thruster control switch, which I believe is currently off. Notice those LCDs are all off there. So these LCDs actually are part of the groups and part of the signals. So if we go ahead and turn our main thruster on, notice we have primary thrusters enabled, high gravity assist enabled. The middle LCD is off. Now let's go, this one's labeled here, dense atmosphere reduced thrust. We turn that on. Now our dense atmosphere reduced thrust engaged is lit up. Now unlike the hover vessel, those, if I sit in the pilot seat in the front, I cannot see them, but all I have to do is get out and I will know the status of those switches. Now part of the reason, if we were to look here on the nurture and check the signals in the control panel, they're all blank. I had actually built the nurture as part of a challenge, and in that challenge all switches had to be accessible from the I don't know, from your character player or whatever, so you had to be able to you couldn't use the ones in the control panel, or if you did, it had to have a matching switch out here to control it as well. So this is all accessible out here. We have our gravity generator control switch. We can shut off our gravity generator. Down here on the planet, it's no big deal. We could shut it off. There's no indicator for that. That just happens to be an on-off switch. If we're out in space, that would be very important. Here are higher gravity assist thrusters, which is currently on. We turn it off. It turns that off. But the thing is, that is doing more than that. So we have our dense atmosphere reduction turned on, and our high gravity assist thrusters turned off. Let us head out the door and I will show you. Again, more stuff on the motion sensors, the ramps and stuff. We're not going to go over that. We've already done a ramp on the back there with the door stuff. But if we go here, notice that this thruster is turned off. One of our downward thrusters. This side thruster, as well as this top thruster and the matching ones on the other side, have been turned off, as well as that side thruster. So we have essentially minimal side thrust. We have, I think, half of our upward thrust, and our forward thrust has been cut to a third. So a fair number of the thrusters have been shut off. And I want to say that we even have half of our thrusters in the back shut off. There is a method to the madness, but right now what we're going to look at is the signal logic for this. So what we're going to do, let's start with our switches here. We'll go back to our signal logic here. We happen to have a category I call maneuver basic, which I've grouped in here a bunch of thrusters, our LCD, and a portion of the RCS. There happens to be another group called Maneuver High G, which I have that lever, the LCD, and a couple thrusters in there. And then the Maneuver Reduction, there's the rest of our RCS and the rest of our thrusters, as well as a lever and another LCD. I've put these in these groups to simplify. When I was putting the things together, I didn't have to go. I hunted down the devices to put them in the group, but once I had them in the group, then when I was putting together the signal logic, I just like, okay, I already have right here the thrusters. So in our device panel, we'll have our basic on-off here, but in this case, I want them to be controllable from the switch. So in that case, there happens to be in your under signal logic an on-off option here to tell it to follow. So we're having it follow a signal called primary thrusters. We will get to that. We're going to go with their primary thruster control switch. That is primary thrusters. So if we go over here, we'll actually find primary thrusters multiple times. Stuff. We have it on an AND switch. Primary thrusters and a high grav assist is on, then we get grav assist on. We have primary thrusters going through an inverter, invert primary thrust. We have primary thrusters and reduct enable. So if both of these are on, then we show reduct on. If basically the idea being here, if the thrusters are all off, there really is not a status where we're reducing how many thrusters we are. They're just all shut off. We'll shut off the LCD display. But if the primary thrusters are on and we've turned our reduct enable on, well, then we're going to show that the reduct enable is on. Okay, now the reduct enable happens to be coming from here, down here. We'll deal with that in just a little bit. But primary thrusters, there are several things that are feeding the primary thrusters there. Notice that the invert primary thrusters is being fed down into here. This is an OR. In this case, dense atmosphere reduction. If that is on, then this is on. If the thrusters are off, then this is on. So if either one of these are on, then this is on, reduct enable. Might not make a whole lot of sense. You're like, well, why are we turning the reduct enable on when we're going to be turning those thrusters off? Remember, we can invert the signal on the stuff. In this case, I am naming the signal so I know what the signal is. The signal is when we're turning on the reduction. And then I reduct enable. Then I have the show reduct on the stuff. Okay. Well, if we go over here, I have them. Let's go find the group for maneuver reduction. Here's our lever feeding out the signal, dense atmo reduction. That's down here going into our R signal. So if we turn it on, then we turn on the reduct enable. If the primary thrusters are turned off, then that's on. Which then we come down here to the thrusters. They're all inverting that. Basically, if the reduct enable is turned off, then they're on. Since we inverted the primary, it's a little complicated, but basically that's part of the reason why we're actually using the inverter in this case, is because it was the easy solution to as either that, or I was going to be inverting the dense atmosphere reduction, so that when I turned it on, it was then sending an off signal, or that stuff. To me, it made more sense because in this case, I'm turning on the dense atmosphere reduction to leave that on and invert the primary thrust signal, and then we're inverting it back here. But in this case, we're also mixing in the dense atmosphere reduction. So if I turn on the dense atmosphere direction, it's sending an on signal to these thrusters, but they're set to invert it to an off. So if I turn on the dense atmosphere reduction, they get turned off. If I turn off the primary thrusters, that gets inverted to an on signal, reducing, because it goes into an R gate here, producing a on signal, and they get turned off. So it's kind of like for the thrusters, that one gets inverted twice, whereas the dense atmosphere reduction only gets inverted once. But in this case, I did it so I could follow it, knowing that I'm turning on my reduction, these get turned off. I'm turning off my thrusters, well, I'll turn that on so that it can then match, so that they get turned off. Notice here the LCD here, show reduct on. That was when the primary thrusters are on and the reduction is enabled, then we'll go ahead and turn on that LCD. So that's stuff. Now I also rigged a few of the RCS, because RCS uses power as well. Stuff. In this case, I'm, in addition to turning off a number of the thrust arms, I'm also turning off half the RCS. So this whole thing, when you do the maneuver reduction, it's not going to turn as well as, that stuff. To me, it made more realism. If I'm turning off half the thrusters, it seems more realistic that the thing's not going to still turn on a dime. Not that it necessarily does, but that's the, I hope you get the understanding from what I said there, that if I'm reducing the thrusters, it would make sense, it would seem more realistic that the vessel would have a harder time turning. So if we go up here to our high G assist, high grav assist, okay, we have here this is going in primary thrusters, high grav assist into an and, so they both have to be on for it to be on. And then we have our grav assist on. So the lever's high grav assist goes out here into our AND gate, grav assist on. Notice, in this case, we're just having the LCD straight up follow it. So straight up just following that signal, as well as the thrusters. So if they're on, if they're receiving a signal that they're on, so is the LCD also receiving that same signal, and it should be on. Okay, we go up here to our basic maneuvers. They're just straight up following that switch primary thrusters. So they just go straight off the signal from the switch, straight up primary thrusters. Same, let's see, the LCD. I know that the RCS are also straight up following it. Is that the wrong LCD in this group? It is distinctly possible that the wrong LCD is in this group. Oh, I had not noticed that. Notice these are little half LCDs, and I'm pretty sure that is also should be a half LCD. I'd have to go chase it down in these groups. It should be here, but it is not. It's I think that's this one up here. I'm pretty sure. No, that's not. No, that's not it. That's the that is the correct. Yeah, I have to. I'm pretty sure that's that LCD marking the switch. The LCD that actually goes with that is in. As I said, I try to group them together. I wouldn't be surprised that one of these LCDs that is a part Primary thrusters follow. Yep, it's up in the group LCDs. But at least in this case, the correct LCD is with the signal stuff. So even if it didn't get grouped the way I tried to do it, at least it is correctly associated and working. Well, that gives us a quick demonstration of our groups. So let's see what I can do. I would like to do a now that I've given you followed through these signals for that, is we're going to, let's see, we have our dense atmosphere reduction is on. We're going to turn it off so that those thrusters are on, and we are going to go ahead and turn our high grav assist on. If we look at our control panel, the stuff main, not everything is on. Some of the lights are not on, as some of them are rigged to motion sensors and other stuff. So it's just the state of the way this thing is designed. Stuff. The challenge was to have your vessel be able to fly around Omicron without it redlining. So let's see how Omicron's changed here. Let's force all the lights on, ignoring the sensor. We'll fly here. Power usage 68%. Some crazy stuff, but I'm trying to, let's see, if I just press this. So if I press those three directions all at the same time, yeah, that's what it was. Then I, get it moving at an odd angle, but I push it up there. I want to say it was hitting a little bit higher. Omicron has changed a little bit. At least I believe it has, or either something else has changed. Because I want to say that it was hitting in the low 80s. Somewhere around 81 or 82, I want to say, is what it was hitting for its power usage. I don't know, maybe Alpha 8 changed the value of how much the generators put out or thrusters used. It's not like I've gone and compared the numbers from Alpha 7 to Alpha 8 to figure out why and how everything's changed. But needless to say, it was hitting higher. Everything's turned on. Oh, maneuver is partial. Maybe that will get us our... No, we're still hitting 68%. Okay. Everything's turned on, and granted we did the control panel there to force everything on. I want to say that was actually, we were forcing one of the LCDs on for the maneuver. I think one of these is underneath maneuver. And so the fact that it was shut off to indicate that the high G assist, or that the reduction is actually not on. But let's turn on the reduction. We're going to turn off the high. Well, let's leave the high gravity assist on there. So let's say we're going to a world with high gravity and dense atmosphere. Notice here, we're on Omicron still, so we're not actually really hitting a planet with a denser atmosphere. But we can see here that if I do the same three directions to max out my power usage, come on, instead of hitting 68%, I'm only hitting 58%. A fairly good reduction in the power usage. That idea being that while the challenge was to have your vessel not redlined on Omicron, I included some signal logic to try to shut things off beyond the challenge. So for the challenge, with everything on an Omicron, it would not redline. But then I designed it so that maybe I could take it to other worlds where it might be a little more challenging than Omicron and still be able to adjust things to stuff. And that shows some alternative use of signal logic. Instead of just simply turning on and off the lights, you can get a little more creative in how you manage the power of your vessels or bases. Granted, in this case, I was doing demonstrations of vessels, but some of the similar principles operate for bases, except you don't have thrusters you're managing. But there may be other things you're doing to manage the power of your base, perhaps while you're away, as opposed to when you're there. Okay. I will later find my way back to the base and where everything else is. But I will conclude this video here. I know it's not the greatest video, but hopefully it gives you a good rundown of some examples of signal logic, following some signal logic that's actually been used on some blueprints in the game. And from there, maybe you can come up with some of your own, modifying these, building your own. There are people out there who've made far better vessels than anything I've done as far as signal logic goes. But these, what I've presented here, hopefully will give someone a good start on their own adventures with signal logic. And some of the, again, I shared some of the tricks I do to try to help me make sense of it, following it through in a way that might be confusing to someone else, but the important thing was I could follow it. So even if your signal logic is confusing to me, as long as you can follow it and make it work, well then if I have repair to blueprint, if I'm using a design, so just as someone I would have repair to blueprint to be able to work with one of my builds. So have yourself a good day and enjoy. Oh, look, it's day.